Hi Suvarna, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jignesh, and wishing all our viewers a good period ahead of the budget season.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. It's always interesting to talk to you. Suvarna, our question is, what is your wish list and expectation and expert opinion regarding union budget as an event for the FMCG sector? So over to you, ma'am.
Yes, sure. So, Jignesh, like you mentioned, the wish list from the Union Budget 2022 for the FMCG sector in particular is that what we have seen is since the quarter three of FY22, the overall consumption growth, particularly in the rural areas, has seen some bit of deceleration. And post November 2021, it has only got a little deeper. So therefore, from the budget, what we expect is the finance minister should continue with its increased allocation to social sector and rural focused schemes like the Manrega, where there is assured employment generation that will happen. Because of this, what can happen is it can put more money in the hands of the people, and as a result of this, there could be a recovery in the buying patterns and some disposable incomes being left in the hands of the people that can drive the consumption growth back to the recovery mode. So the broader theme or a wish list is that the allocations to social sector schemes and rural-oriented schemes under the PM Gram Sadak Yojana or the Krishi Sinchai Yojana, the Jal Jeevan Mission or Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, all these scheme allocations could see an increase is what we expect from this budget.
Right.
Besides that, just a point. Besides that, we also think the government's focus on infrastructure development and smart city mission will also lead to creation of more jobs, right? So the Atmanirbhar scheme, the PLI scheme, all these are job-oriented schemes. While these are all structural long-term measures that will drive the consumption, from an immediate near-term perspective, we do think more money in the hands of the people will be good. And with the assembly elections that are lined up in 2022 across 5 states, some bit of socialistic, growth-oriented budget can be expected, in our view, at Axis Securities.
Right, Suvarna. So, what's your view for the sector per se? You think the consumption story is still intact?
While the long-term trend remains intact in terms of the consumption story, of course, there are some speed breaks that we are seeing, hitting the consumption story from a very near-term perspective. And some of these are already visible in terms of one is the decline in the disposable incomes across the rural as well as the urban poor that we have seen even in the urban areas. If we look at the premium or the higher income category people, they have remained insulated from the pandemic related stress, but the other vaster portion of the population has certainly been impacted. So that is one impact that we are seeing from pandemic. Second, what I like to highlight is the raw material inflation that we are seeing globally is also causing some stress on the supply side for most of the companies that operate in India. As a result of this, we are seeing that companies have resorted to taking price increases. And if we pull out certain commentaries from management of certain consumer staple and discretionary companies, we understand that the inflationary scenario is expected to remain firm even in quarter 4 of FY22 as we speak. So the risks are twofold at this point in time. One is that of deceleration of demand for the sector that we are seeing from a very near-term perspective, and the second one being from the raw material inflationary pressures that are persisting even today. However, from a longer term perspective, the per capita consumption for FMCG consumer staple products is much lower than some of the other developing countries in China or maybe for that matter even Brazil, and therefore there is huge scope for India to catch up on that front as well.
Right. So any major global event that you see, which could be a key event for us apart from the Indian budget?
From a global perspective, the immediate event that can have an impact, not particularly from the FMCG sector as a whole, but from the entire global economy as a whole, is the Federal Reserve monetary policy that will be announced tomorrow. It will be underway today and the outcome will be known by tomorrow. And there is an expectation that the Fed Reserve is going to tighten its purse earlier than expected, or rather from March 2022 itself, and that can cause some hiccup to the market momentum as such. But overall, more structural issue that has come up and which can keep markets on tenterhooks time and again is the inflationary headwinds that we are seeing. Because quite a lot of these supply side issues like the transport costs or the freight costs, the container availability and container costs have kind of increased significantly on a YOY basis. And just to put in perspective, in a con call of one of the consumer staple companies, it was mentioned that the container costs have increased from $40 per kg of cost to almost $300 per kg of a produce that needs to be loaded into the container. So that's the kind of an increase we are seeing on the export-oriented costs, right? So to that extent, yes, there will be some pressures on raw material prices that can have an impact or a bearing on the overall profitability of the FMCG company.
Right, Suvarna. It's always a pleasure talking to you, and thank you so much for your time. We look forward to have more such conversation with you.
Yeah. Before I bid adieu to you, Jignesh, I would just like to highlight some of the top picks for us in the consumer staples and the retail space at Axis Securities is that we continue to like Hindustan Unilever from a longer term perspective because of the sheer agility this business model showcases and the market leadership it has in the categories that it operates in. Besides that, we also like retail companies like ABFRL, the Trend, or even footwear companies like Bata being some of them. And any opportunities or corrections if we see in these stocks should be considered as good time to enter and accumulate at lower levels from a longer term perspective. So I think with that, I'm sure some of our viewers will pay heed to it and keep a track of these stocks.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you so much once again, for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Looking forward to have a similar conversation after budget.
Sure.
Thank you.
We'll be glad to join in. Thank you.